MAINE. Fort Williams bunker, and it's been abandoned for a long time now. And so I'm thinking through, I'm on the coast of Maine and the Atlantic Ocean just on the other side of this bunker, and processing the idea of when maps shift, and the idea that we set aside our thought and engage both on a defense and proactively have to move forward in our lives. And in the same way, there's times in which we abandon, and there's times in which we have some stick-to-itiveness. And so measuring out that idea of mapping onto what is it in my life that God has called me to abandon. 1 Corinthians 13, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, thought like a child. But when I became a man, an adult, I began thinking about mature things. It's okay to continue to dream, but our dreams shift, they change, and we have to set up new stalwarts in the midst of those. And so what is it that I'm holding on to, that I'm clinging on to, that may not be a God-given delight and dream? And maybe it is, but are there some things in my life that I haven't released yet, put away and caused old memories? This is the bunker at Fort Williams, Maine, just out of sight of Portland, Maine. Neat piece of property to explore. Slugs, shells everywhere. So we are near Popham Beach, and Popham was a colony that's rarely remembered, mainly because it got second place. Second place colonizing the Americas next to Jamestown. Now the French came in and they had colonized St. Croix beforehand, but as far as the continental, St. Croix is an island, was Jamestown, and then right behind it there was this like race to the Americas, and Popham Colony was number 2, up in Maine, New England area, and it favored a little better than Jamestown that first winter, and so Jamestown lost about half of its population, and Popham did fairly well. Popham was also known for, although they got second place, they were the first ones to craft an American-made, from this soil, a ship. They came in on the Gift of God, accompanied by John and Mary was the name of the other ship, and then they took from the land of the continent and they built a ship, and they named it Virginia. Thinking about second place, what good was that? They created this vehicle, the Virginia, and the Virginia made multiple trips across the Atlantic and back, and one of those next trips it made was actually a supply ship to Jamestown. And so kind of fascinating thought as we process what is it in our life where we've messed up or come in second, and that messy shift. You know, it didn't come out, they came out a little farther north. Popham was a little farther north in Maine than they had planned on. And so in our own plans, when things don't come out as scheduled, as planned, how might God be using those shifts in our life? And have we given enough space, enough headspace to think through? Man, God uses our best, and He also uses our mess. So the question is, as we make this missional shift, how might God use my mess where I didn't quite hit the mark, targeted mark? And so Popham was like that, and their example was, man, they crafted the first ship that came off the continent, and it supplied Jamestown so that they could further survive. So what is it in our life that maybe is a little messy and didn't go as planned, but God was going to use it to a greater advantage down the road? That's the missional shift to be aware of. I'm across from Portland, Maine. Pretty good sized bay across from me. There used to be a grist mill right here. And I was thinking about the missional shift and the messes that we make. To some degree, when we make a mess, it's like a low tide. And this is a neap or a spring tide when it's like super low and you can really see. This isn't water, this is just muck. And so that mess and what it surfaces in those super low tides, and there's going to be seasons of our lives that we got to figure out some really hard things. I mean, life is hard. The world has fallen. Jesus hasn't returned yet. And so the question is, and the missional shift is, and how do I handle, do I realize, do I put my hope in, there's a tide coming that will never swell back? Do I realize that God is using the surf, and then also these extreme spring or neap tides that just countersink us. God can use those for His glory. So that's kind of the shift, because sometimes in our emotions we're back and forth on that. It's like, man, how God are you going to use this for your glory? How's that going to make sense in my story? It's like back when you were in middle school and you're like, I'm never going to use this math ever again. And then somewhere down the line you maybe use it. Maybe that's a bad analogy. But I hope you get the word picture here. These tides that go in and out, they're like our lives. And when there's a really low tide, it surfaces some things that are inside of us that are messy, they're ugly. And so don't deny those, confess those, bring them to the surface, and don't allow to shift to the right or the left, but be on mission even in your own mess. Don't use that as an excuse not to do something, not follow Jesus, but to follow Him. The low tide is messy. So is the low tide in our own lives. And so that messy shift. Challenge.